Setting up good Facebook Live. Reject. All right. Hey, everybody. It's Dr. Mandy here, and I know you haven't seen me in a little while. I was buried in studying for my CNS exam, which I did pass. Woohoo! And I got a really good grade on it. I got an A, 90. I was really happy about that. So that's beyond me. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to announce my new credential as certified nutrition specialist. So I'm back. So I got some time now, and I'm here with a wonderful patient of mine, Jillian, who joined us. Hello. She joined us with root cause investigation just a few months ago, and she's a rock star. She came in headstrong, saying, "I'm gonna do this, and I'm ready. I'm ready." Remember?
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
I still remember that day, and I was like, "This girl's gonna do it," and she did. She's not, it hasn't even been 6 months for her, and she's already feeling better. So we get to hear about her story today. So those of you who are here are probably wondering, what it's like to work with us. And so that's going to give you a little bit of insight, and so we see some live people here who've actually been through this, because there is hope for you. This is not a disease of despair like everybody wants you to think it is. It is not. Okay. So this is Jillian, and what I want you to do before we get into your story, just so people who are kind of like running through here and like really don't have a lot of time to sit through all of this, tell us about, what would you tell people who are listening, who would consider the root cause investigation? What would you tell them to expect, and what insight would you give them about what it's like to be through this experience? Like, think about things that you found that were helpful, and tests and things that really opened your eyes that you didn't know before.
Yes. So definitely with the root cause investigation, I think the biggest pieces of it were exactly the types of tests that were taken that really spearheaded everything, because without those, you really wouldn't know what direction to even go in, because there's so many different directions you can go in, and it can get really, really, really overwhelming. I was super overwhelmed at first. So having Mandy there to be like, these are the main tests that can really drive your experience, was super helpful. And it's a great way to start and not feel so overwhelmed. So I think I did the mineral test and then the organic acids test, amongst others, but those were the two that really were the biggest ones. They really get a good picture of everything that's going on in my body. I was able to see so many smaller things going on that just created what was like the final puzzle piece of IC. So there were so many different pieces of it. And having Mandy there to really explain each bit. One thing that was really helpful, like with the video sessions, is like she's typing out everything she's saying, attaching resources at the bottom. So with all the information she gives, she doesn't just leave you hanging with it all, which was really helpful. You wouldn't just have one session a month and then like you're on your own. She would always have resources there for you to go back to. And it was helpful too, because Mandy always incorporated that mindset piece of it too, and always said, like, you have to realize that it's a long process, it's a journey, it's not going to happen overnight. So just going in expecting to have patience, and to not beat yourself up so much if you don't heal right away. I came in really headstrong, but I also had some slip ups, and I had to just get over it and move on, and not getting so stuck in the negative parts of it was what really helped me. Just focusing so much on getting to that healing piece, and knowing that you're always going to be healing, but it's just going to look different, and it's going to look so much better. And the healing you do later on is a more peaceful type of healing. You're not in the thick of it all.
It's not as aggressive initially. Yeah. It feels more aggressive because it's, right. You're trying to, it's like I would use a car as an example, because I think people could understand that analogy.
I love that analogy. Yeah, that still sticks with me. Sorry to interrupt, but
I love that, because I think people resonate with that, because people do get their car fixed, or even dental work or something like major. Like, so let's say it's, let's just say it's a car, because a car we tend to neglect. We just kind of drive it and I'll fix it later. It's cracking, it's making noise. I'll fix it later. And then it gets to a point where you can't drive it any longer, or it's really not functioning anymore. And so at that point, you're like, oh my God, I gotta get this fixed. That's usually people wait to get their health plans going is after they get to the point where the symptoms are unbearable, because usually early on you're like, a little digestive pain here and there, a little diarrhea, loose stools, I'll deal with that. And then when it gets to a point where like, oh my God, I can't function. So the car was a great analogy, because I say, all right, you go to the mechanic, and when you show the car to the mechanic, two things happens. First, he's going to say, I've got to do some diagnostic testing, and he's going to give you options. He's going to give you a low option and a heavy option. And obviously the more he tests, the more he finds. And if you go with the low option, well, you should expect a longer repair journey, because he might not find anything there in that low option. So let's say you just did one test as opposed to 3, 4, 5, whatever, in your case, you went maximum, we did all 3. So with the blood work. So we saw a lot with the 3 testing. It was for you, is perfect, because it opened your eyes. And then what you found was initially we had to undo the damage. So the car repairman might say, all right, first I got to take your engine out and replace it. That's pretty intense. But once that part of it is, the foundation of it has kind of been set into place, not everything else can kind of fall in line. And he might just do little tweaks here and there to kind of optimize how well your car runs. Really, the main gist of it happens in the beginning, which in your case, and for a lot of people, when they go on that low oxalate diet, which we know with majority of people that I've tested, we've seen that they have hyperoxaluria, which is one of the root causes of IC. So when they first go on the low oxalate diet, and I think it happened to you too, you'll have dumping symptoms. You actually get worse before you get better. Did that happen?
Yeah.
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 So there's a period of getting worse before better.
Yeah. And it was very, well, you warned me before, which was helpful because I stuck it out. But I think I had to really hyper focus on like what you were saying and like what your program was. And I had to be honest, get out of all the other support groups, get out of everything else, because what you were teaching me was like factual, and like you were very much enforcing that it's going to take some time and there's going to be some like ups and downs, but you're going to get there. And I had to really shift away from like, there's like the magic pill and this and that, like all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like it was the beginning of working with you, I was still kind of hanging on to that. And I had to really let that go and accept that like it's going to take baby steps, and I'm just going to work through this journey that I'm on right now. And even if you're not getting there right away, everything you're doing when you're working with Mandy is benefiting your health in some way. And IC sometimes just happens to be the last health benefit. Sometimes it's like all these other things are getting fixed, and it's like you really want IC to be the first thing that gets fixed, but that's not the case.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, because it's the last stop. And think about it, it's actually on the bottom of your body too, right? It's like excretory. But honestly, yeah, I mean, the things are a lot of upstream. And so what I told people is, when we do like when you start noticing improvements, you're going to notice energy, you're going to notice brain fog lifting, you're going to notice less aches and pains throughout your body, you're going to notice, improved bowel habits before all the bladder comes later. And sometimes, in some cases, the bladder takes a lot longer, and the interventions sometimes are even more. You're very fortunate too, because of your age. And I'm going to be completely transparent here. Those of you listening who are over 40, it's a different journey when you're over 40, and then even more postmenopausal. So I'm so glad you came in at your age, when you still have hormones, you still have, things to work in your favor, because as we get older, it just takes longer to heal. So your journey is not always representative of everybody else's. Hers was very fast, and I do often see that with my 20-something-year-olds. With my 40 and ups, the journey's different. And honestly, that's why I say, if you're listening and you're in your 20s and you have IC, you really should do it now, because you don't want to wait, because all that damage that's happening now is only going to get worse with time. And remember, I told you that too.
Yeah, because I started with IC in March, and I think I found you in July. Like it felt like an eternity, but it was not even 6 months with it. So that's why I'm fortunate that I jumped on this path really quickly. But I mean,
That's so ideal. I mean, I wish I had that. I had it for 10 years before I knew what was going on.
Yeah. Well, I think now too, there's more out there about like health functional medicine. Like I had heard the term functional medicine before, whereas I think 10 years ago, that was so uncommon. Yeah. So,
although I did see a functional doctor 10 years ago, and she did tell me to get off of dairy. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't. Let's be honest.
There's also other resources like that helped supplement. Like I listened to these great podcasts that were all about functional medicine, and something that was reinforcing for me is because I think sometimes everybody's a little skeptical and everybody's always looking for something to not, I don't know, to just discount what they're doing. But everything I listened to about functional medicine was, everything was like, oh yeah, Mandy said that. Oh, right, that's what Mandy said.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
it just reassured me that I was on the right path, because everybody was saying the same thing. And functional medicine is this really amazing, awesome world. And I don't know why people aren't in it more. I mean, unfortunately, it has to take health issues to be in it, but I wish it didn't. I wish we could just all be using functional health medicine like from the beginning.
I'll tell you why. The medical system's not set up for it, because the doctor only has 7 minutes to sit with you, and not the 4 or 5 hours that I do with the lab reviews. Like I literally spend a lot of time on these lab reviews, and I'm very detailed and I'm very researched and I'm very thorough, and I spend an equal amount of time with everybody. And if I see something and believe me, there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences. And when I see differences, I have to spend the time to research, well, what's going on? And then I call my colleagues, and I'll go on Facebook pages and I'll ask my colleagues, and I'm like, I want to know what's wrong with this. Why is this person having this? I haven't seen this before. Doctors don't have enough time. They have to spend that 7 minutes with you. I have friends who are medical doctors, and they've said to me, 7 minutes. If you spend longer than 7 minutes with them, you're making a mistake, because you've got all these people in the waiting room waiting for you. That's the problem. It's not set up for this. So that answers the question.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So before we're going to go back into your story. Tell us how you're feeling now, today. What are you experiencing compared to March?
So compared to March, I'm not 100% better, and we'll get into a little more of that, but I am like so much better, to the point where it does not get in the way of my life at all. I also drink a lot of water, so I do have a little bit more frequency than the next person. I don't let that bother me. So what? Like some people have, like, whatever, it's just a thing. I just feel like now I
have friends who have frequency and they don't have IC. They just drink a lot of water and caffeine, and that makes them go to the bathroom. Yeah.
Right. So now I don't pay attention to how often I'm going to the bathroom. I don't have, it doesn't hurt at all to go to the bathroom. I don't have, like, I felt at night like this intense pressure all the time, and I don't feel that anymore. I feel like in the beginning stages, you're constantly aware of your pelvis and your bladder, and I'm not thinking about it anymore. I don't notice it. Occasionally I will. And if I do have a bit of a flare, because I do still have flares, it's because, I went out and I drank a little bit of alcohol. Of course, the next day I'm going to have a couple of days of like not feeling so great, but I just accept it and move on. And I think that's been key in not keeping my flares consistent, because I know what happened. I drink a lot of water the next day. I eat what makes my body feel good, and I move on, and then I'm okay.
Yeah. So it's a fleeting episode, as opposed to this lingering chronic. Yeah.
Oh, when people said when I first got diagnosed and people talked about, I had a flare and then it went away, or I'm in a flare up, I was like, what do you mean flare? Like I was in a constant, like from the second I got it to like a month or so ago, 2 months ago, I was in a constant flare. So I was like, I didn't know what people meant when they said they were in a flare up or not. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. This thing does not go away from me. And now I like have much, much more good days than bad. And it's like a couple times, like I've maybe had like a few bad days in the past 2 months. And that's because of like, okay, well, I went out and drink a little bit. Well, not out in terms of like before COVID, but a little bit
of course. Yeah, I get you.
I'm trying to throw that in there.
Of course, we're good. It's all good. We're still on Facebook. All right. Yeah, and I'm just making sure we're still on Facebook. Can't use that C word. All right. So so that's awesome. So what was I going to ask you? Oh, one more question. You said you were on other IC sites. What are you referring to? Like, there's other sites you were on. Were they depressing?
They were they were just so overwhelming and depressed. So there was like a healing interstitial cystitis naturally one, and like then there was like a pelvic pain one that was all like about physical therapy, which I think can be great, but it's not the whole thing. And it didn't personally work for me. And I think maybe it can be a piece for some people, but it just wasn't the path for me. So I was like, this isn't helping. And God, I was in like another one. I can't even remember. I was in like a total of 4. And they were just so overwhelming. At one point there was one, like there were people that were like, they had to change their whole like water filter system, like only ate organic all the time. And like things that you mentioned, but you're also like, it's realistic changes you can make in your life. Like, and affordable ones, you know, like you don't have to eat 100% organic all the time. Like if you have like a vegetable that's not organic, you're not going to hurt your bladder. You know, it's like that. It was embedding so much fear in me.
Yeah.
You know, that didn't need to.
It's a lot of nonsense. And honestly, like even with the organic food, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I was reading some studies, like I think it's like only 60 or 70% less pesticides. So you're still getting pesticides in organic anyway. It's not 100%. You can't, because it's cross-contaminated. How are you going to avoid the same? It's the same water that's being run off into. You can't, unless you're like in a greenhouse that's completely isolated. But even with that, I mean, I don't know how they can actually do that. That'd be very expensive. So when it comes to organic, I just say Dirty Dozen is probably the best bet. And you have to, it has to be realistic, because when I was a weight loss coach years ago, the one thing I learned from that was you can't put people on these strict diets, because if they can't stick to it, what good is the diet?
Exactly.
Yeah, what good is it? They have to be able to stick to it. And so that's, you know, and there's certain deal breakers. We have deal breakers. We have certain foods you just can't have. No thing, like spinach, right? For most people, gluten. There's just some no-nos. And then there's a few things we're like, it's dose dependent. You know, with oxalates, it's dose dependent. You want to have a little bit of almond butter? Okay, just have a little bit, you know, don't eat the whole jar. So there's a lot of that, and you have to be able to have a normal life, and that's ultimately the goal here, and as normal as you can make it within the boundaries that you've set for your health. I mean, obviously you have a lot more flexibility than someone who's had IC for 20 years and is like bedridden and is trying to just get out of that state. I mean, in your case, you just only had it for 4 months. So, okay, so that's great. So tell us now, you said that it was in March. Do you remember that day, or was it a gradual thing, or did you just wake up one day and have IC?
Oh, I remember that day. I thought I had a UTI. It was like classic UTI symptoms. I feel like I'm like a broken record, because everybody's like, well, I thought I had a UTI, but that's totally what I thought it had. And then had a couple of days of it, and I was like, okay, like this is weird. It's not really going away. I, was on antibiotics and it wasn't going away. I think I was on antibiotics for that, for BV, for like so many. I was on 3 different doses of antibiotics from like March all the way through April. Ultrasounds for ovarian cysts, because I thought maybe this is a cyst issue. Like anything that wasn't chronic, I was trying to figure out, because like it's scary at first to think that this is a chronic thing. And I had like the burning when I urinated, just burning constantly, always had to go to the bathroom. It's keeping me up at night. Pressure, like I said, like in my lower abdomen, and just again that urgency and frequency all the time that just would not let up.
Even after antibiotics, you didn't have any relief?
No relief. There was one day that it went away and then it came back. It was very odd. And I ended up having like lower back pain because of it. But it never got to a point, like there really wasn't an infection. I tested negative for everything. And I know we found some low grade stuff through the microgen test, and that was key at the end for me. But at the beginning, there was no infection, like that was getting worse to the point. I know sometimes people have an infection and it gets worse and they end up like in the hospital. That never happened with me. So it was just this constant burning and like frequency and urgency that nothing could make it better. It wouldn't go away. And that's ultimately what like led me to you. And I don't even remember how I discovered you. I think I've always been into holistic health. So I think I just was Googling and I found IC Healer, and I was like, oh, I think I Googled you and found you, because I remember.
How'd you find me? Because I'm not on the first page. I'm working on it.
You work for me.
Oh, was I really? I'm not usually on the first page of Google, but I'm working on that analytic thing.
I think, or maybe, I don't know, something led me to you. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
It could have been a blog. I have a few blogs that you show up on the first page. So I don't know.
Yeah. And I like just really liked the fact that you had IC so badly and you came back from it. And I've always been really like, I always wanted to get better with my health. So part of me was like, this in a way was like meant to be, because it forced me to really prioritize my health, which I've always wanted to do and have never been able to.
Mhm.
And that's
Well,
kind of
the
what
reason has to be strong enough.
I know.
I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, going back to the weight loss example, or even with diabetes, and I have some diabetic patients who, um, it really doesn't sometimes hit my own father. Okay, my own father has cardiovascular issues, and we found some blockages, and I'm working on his diet and trying to help him with his therapy. And it even with this stents in his heart, it's still not enough. I'm like catching him eating things, and I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? You really
Yeah.
want a triple bypass? But
Yeah.
for some people, it's I can't tell you why, but some people it just takes them more to get motivated. It's like almost it's the threshold is longer. Like yours was short. Yours was short. You're like, I ain't gonna deal like I'm not gonna live like this. You kidding
Right.
me? So you were ready. Whereas like someone like myself, I'm gonna be honest, I was one who waited 10 years. I don't think that the solutions were there. Maybe would have been a different story. But I did sweep it under the rug for quite some time. I had kids. I had to raise my children. I had other priorities. And I was just like, my health is not important right now. I'm just going to wait until, it's going to go away. That's what I hear a lot of people say. It's just going to go away. It's going to randomly go away. I promise. I believe it will. And it doesn't, because what happened with me is what happens with everybody else. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And then you get that rock bottom. If you read my story, I talk about my rock bottom where I just like, I can't live like this anymore. And that's when I decided to dive in like you did. But you're fortunate that you started early. So that's awesome. And I hear a couple people listening right now who are younger and who in their 20s, even 30s, like, don't wait. Why? I mean, it's not going to help you to wait. It's
Right.
not. It's only going to get worse. So when you got diagnosed, was it a cystoscopy or like what was your diagnosis journey?
I actually, it was funny because it was just a diagnosis by like, they didn't really do much for me. So I went to my general practitioner and then to a gynecologist. And I ended up being referred to a urologist. And I had researched about IC beforehand, but no one had really told me about it. But I had just through, of course, you're Googling like constantly when you have health issues, you don't know what's going wrong. And IC popped up. And when I came in and I said I've never had like a UTI, it's been testing negative. I don't know what's wrong with me, but these are my symptoms. The first thing she said was, "Have you ever heard of interstitial cystitis?"
Right.
And I was just like, "Please don't tell me that's what this is," you know?
Because you had Googled it and you knew what it was all about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I read all the forums, which are awful. Just
Oh,
don't, everybody says don't go on Google, but everybody goes on Google anyway. But just like everyone else's journey is not your own. Even if your symptoms are similar, you might not be that person, just focus on you.
yeah.
Get off Google. I wish I did. But
It freaks you out when you see these people, especially with the ones that are taking their bladders out.
yeah. Yeah. So we did an ultrasound for my bladder and they found nothing wrong.
Right.
And I didn't want to do anything more than that. And my urologist said like, okay, well, there's bladder treatments we can do. And I was like, I pumped the brakes. I was like, I'm young. I don't want to be on medication. There's no way this is going to be forever. There's no way there's another way to this. I had pursued physical therapy first because I learned about that. It did not work for me. She was great, but just didn't work. And that's kind of when I found you, because
Yeah.
I was like, nothing else is working. There's got to be another way. And
Yep.
I knew like I'd learned about health. I'd learned about like what like inflammation and what gluten does and dairy. Like I knew there was so much that could be done about it. I just didn't know where to begin.
So tell the people who are listening, what is your root cause? Like, if you were to summarize what we found in an elevator pitch, for example, what would you tell them?
Okay. So my biggest thing was I was deficient in so many important minerals. My immune system was so repressed or suppressed, which makes sense because I have other things that had gone on. And I was like, that makes sense. My immune system can't fight these things off. So those two things combined with, we did a microgen, that's what it's called, right?
Yeah,
Test towards the end. And I did have quite an infection, not to what a gynecologist would think, but to what
chronic low-grade
a
infection.
doctor would.
Yeah.
A chronic low-grade infection, and it was actually vaginal, and it was causing issues with my bladder. So that piece at the end, we didn't catch that until I shared some other symptoms. And she was like, maybe you should get this test too. That it really put it all together, because I was doing the work to help my immune system and to balance my minerals and vitamins and just get healthier. But there wasn't enough. Everything was getting better. Like my acne was better. I was never bloated. Everything was great, but my bladder stuff was still there. And there was other things going on that we did that microgen and found all that, all those test results. And I think it was, so I went on the silver, and that was like a really key. That's what like pushed me to the place I'm at now. It was that plus probiotics, the suppositories, like a lot of probiotics and prebiotics, plus the structured silver to fight off the.
So as you know, the structured silver is actually this, and I actually found this myself when I was battling with UTIs. Very effective. Now I will say you probably didn't have a complex biofilm, because I did, and this alone didn't do it for me personally, because I had a complex biofilm. I remember we talked about this. You caught this so early, it never got to that point. Had you continued on, those bacteria would have actually formed a very complex biofilm, and this wouldn't have penetrated it. You would have had to do ozone. That was what I found is ozone. So you're lucky that that this helped, and I do believe what it did is it flushed out your urinary tract. So a lot of that inflammation that was going on in your urethra and bladder were probably infectious driven. But again, you're correct. I mean, a lot of that is downstream. Upstream was probably our lifestyle, which is alcohol, stress, and food, leads to minerals and vitamin depletions, which are all cofactors for important cellular processes. And as a result of that, that is really what is your immune system relies on, but also your gut. Your gut, remember the microbiome and the microbes in your gut are really key too for your immune system. So between the probiotics and upregulating your gut function and upregulating your immune system, and then removing the inflammatory agents out with antimicrobials as well as dietary, you were able to restore homeostasis, which is what we all want, which is, you know, the end goal is restore homeostasis so you no longer have symptoms. Yeah. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So that was it sounds easy the way I put it together, but it really wasn't easy. It was, we really had to dive in, and luckily for her, a lot of that stuff did show up on labs. There's every once in a while I run into somebody who's a little bit more complicated, and the labs are not giving me the insights as to what I'm looking for, and I have to dive a little deeper. But yours was a pretty straightforward one. When you first got diagnosed, did you try to seek other types of care with, or was the doctor just kind of giving you antibiotics and offering you meds and that was it?
Yeah, it was just that. I did say to her though, like, I want to try physical therapy. I don't want to go on medication. And she was like, that's a great decision. And I actually saw one more doctor after, a uro gynecologist, someone who would piece it all together. And I heard really wonderful things about him, and he's done great things for people who need like acute things done. But again, like anything chronic, I'm learning, especially through this, like you're just not gonna get the answers and the healing you need from doctors that aren't from, you know, mainstream doctors.
Mainstream, yeah.
Like they were just gonna put me on medication again.
Yeah.
Or I actually had shared, I said I've started to do, because I think I saw him in July, and it was after I met with you, and I said, you know, I'm starting to do some more like holistic functional stuff, and he was like totally on board with that. He was like, I think keep doing that. You don't need the medication yet.
Oh, wow.
Blah, blah, blah. So he was really great, but I mean, I wasn't gonna get the resources from him. He was supportive, but he wasn't the guy to go to about it.
I'm glad he supported it. Some just don't. So he was all for it.
Yeah, he was really nice. If you ever have acute issues, go to him, but not for IC.
Well, I'm glad he was open to the idea. I mean, because sometimes there's not even open to the idea. So,
yeah.
and listen, it's a very humble thing to be able to say, as a medical doctor who's been through all of this training and medical school, and they see somebody else doing helping the same patient, but able to do things that he doesn't do. It's a very humble thing to say. Is, yeah, you know, that's a great idea. I think that's humble. I mean, because, you know, a lot of them have a lot of pride, and they don't want to think that there's something better out there, but it's not about better. It's just different.
Exactly. Like they're great if you need a surgery, if you need like something quick, but they are just not for chronic stuff.
They're not, and they shouldn't be. And, you know, I wouldn't want them to be, because I don't think that they would even be able to do it, even if, I think they would have to really change. The functional medicine doctor that I am friends with, she literally has to change, she can't see as many patients.
Yeah.
She only can see a certain number a day because the amount of time that it takes, and that just doesn't work for that system, and the insurance and all that, all those, it's bad, and I can't see it, how that's going to even get better. Did you have any support from friends and family with this?
I did. I was very fortunate. I did. They didn't necessarily understand really what was going on, but they understood that I was seeking out like a different way. And my mom was super supportive, and she, she encouraged me and said, I actually know some of my friends who have like done functional and holistic medicine and have like helped themselves so much through that. So I did have support. Nobody was like, there were some skeptical people, but nobody was telling me not to do it. So I was fortunate.
But you're thrilled that you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's so important. I think that's one of the things that I find is a big challenge, is when people have friends and family who don't support it. Because, there might be wives whose husbands don't support it financially, or because it's an investment. And that's another thing you might want to tell them about, is the investment, the financial investment. Now that you've been through it, because I will tell you, myself included, I just signed up for, like, let's say, 6 months of a year of business coaching, for example, and it was a big investment. And when I first saw the sticker price, I was just like, what? You know what I mean? But now that I'm through it, now I understand what it was involved in all this training, and I don't feel that way anymore, because I realized, yes, this, to get what you want, requires an investment. So maybe one of the things you can talk about with people who are listening is, has your mindset shifted a little bit about investing in things that are important to you, like your health?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. 100%. I was the first person to like save money in any way. Like, I'm very frugal. I don't like to spend money. And I just had to tell myself,
me too.
Listen, yeah, I had to say to myself, what else am I going to spend this money on? Like, what better way to invest in myself than to spend it on my health? I'm just going to be honest. By no means I'm okay. Like, financially, I'm okay, but I literally just graduated from grad school. I have debt.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of an income right now. I'm climbing my way back up, but it wasn't easy for me to invest in this, but I had a good enough reason to, and I think everybody listening has a good enough reason to. And there are ways to do it. Like, when it was an investment to do the root cause with you, Mandy, but it was a good middle ground to go on. It was a good way for me to get what I needed without spending everything I had. And by no means did I spend everything I had. It's not that bad, but it's not covered by insurance. And I just had to really say to myself, like, first of all, it's COVID time, so I'm not spending money on travel. I'm not really spending money going out. What else am I going to spend my money on? Like, what better time to really quiet my life and invest in my health? So, and it's still happening. So it's a good time for everybody to reprioritize. I had to reprioritize.
Yeah. When I bought my $3,000 ozone machine, and that's how much it cost, I remember I was still having UTIs, and I was having a lot of that discomfort, and just, it was horrible. It was affecting my love life. It was affecting the ability to go places and to travel. I remember I was on vacation in New York, and I was having, or maybe it was at the beach, and I had another UTI, and I couldn't enjoy my family. I was literally going to the pharmacy trying to get medication. I was getting all this like supplements. I was like in pain. I was like, the kids are all playing in the water. I'm sitting on the sand, like just huddling in pain. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, seriously? You know what I mean? I'm like, this is not a life. I'm not even enjoying my vacation right now, And so I ended up just biting the bullet. I'm like, that's it. I had it. You know what I mean? And this is when I had already done through all the healing that I could do, but I still had this leftover residual UTI. And I'm like, God, I can't get rid of this. And I finally found an ozone clinic, and I started going to do ozone, and I bit the bullet, and I was like, that's it. I'm buying a machine. And I did. And it's, I haven't hardly used it anymore because I did the healing I needed with it, and I'm good now. But, I look back, I don't even flinch. I'm like, it was $3,000 and I don't regret it. You know what
Right.
I mean? So that was really good to say that. And I think, that is the biggest challenge, I think, is just being here and doing it. And once you're here and if the investment's been made, you still have a house, you still, you still have disposable income, you're still living your life. And guess what? You are living your life. You are
Yeah.
living your life now. You're not just going through the motions. You are now living your life.
Right. I am. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I started this, or I developed this just with a new boyfriend. And so I'm sure you can all imagine how
Yeah.
devastating it was. And luckily, he was very supportive. But like, I'm just very, very, very happy now in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's just not holding me back anymore. And it was so worth it, And I think I think with some people or with a lot of people, and something for me is it's really scary to like have to change. And
Yeah.
I had to change so much of my life. I
That's the
had to
hardest
change.
part.
Yeah. And it's really scary. And I think even though the pain is awful, it's like at least you're still the same. It's like so scary to like let go of that and change who you are. And I did a lot of emotional work alongside this that was really helpful. Um, that I think is also a good piece of it. Just again, that mindset. And Mandy encouraged that a lot, very much like little things you'd say, like, gluten, you don't want to think gluten is the enemy, it's not evil. Like, don't think of yourself as restricting. It's just you're feeding your body the foods it needs.
Yeah.
You're loving yourself in a way you never have. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm like, by feeding myself all these healthy foods and by making better choices, I'm just I'm in this place where I've never loved myself more. And I think
Mhm.
that is like amazing. And I think everybody can get to that place. You just have to make that really scary decision to commit.
What a gift to your significant other to love yourself. Because you can't
Yeah.
love others till you love yourself. You have to love
Yeah.
yourself before you can give. And that's why I wanted to do this for my family too, my children too, because I knew that
Mhm.
I was really, really not I couldn't be here for them.
Yeah.
And so, well, but thank you so much. If you anything else you want to say to the listeners, go ahead and say it, because I think that those are who are hanging around. I think some people are going to listen to it later, are going to really, really jive with the things that you're saying.
Yeah. I definitely want to just say one more thing, and that's like, I think at the beginning you're so angry at your body and you hate your body and you hate yourself and you just want to do anything to get like to crawl out of your skin, and start to like love your body again, start to feel grateful that you have it, start to do things to make it feel good and to make you feel good, and like repair that relationship with yourself alongside all the health changes that Mandy encourages. That's like a huge part of it. And like Mandy, you really like, I think with doctors, you're on medication, you're doing this, and it's all things to like work against what your body's doing. But you really taught me and you encouraged me that like you're not working against your body, you're working with your body and you're mending it and you're loving it again. And that's like huge.
Thank you. I'm glad that you appreciated that. Well, that's great. So we're going to wrap it up here. And she's on our Facebook page. So if you have any questions for her underneath the video, feel free to tag her, and just, tag me, I'll answer your questions. Any questions that you have, go ahead and tag me. And, if you have any questions about this program and about just healing from IC. It's great having you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Bye.